Will Real Madrid spend big again? Does Roberto Mancini's return to Inter mean a busy month for them? And will Dortmund buy their way out of trouble? Joining me today on the sofa are Goals Peter Staunton and Kris Voakes. I'm Aidan Magee, and this is our Transfer Talk European Special. Let's talk about Europe then, because Real Madrid spent huge sums last summer. Do you expect them to be busier again in January?
I don't think they'll be busy, but it wouldn't be beyond the realms of possibility for them to bring in maybe one or two players. We do know they have been looking quite closely at the Cruzeiro midfielder Lucas Silva. Not only Real Madrid, in fact, a whole host of clubs around Europe have been interested. But Real might step up their interest, considering that they've had some difficulties in the central midfield area with injuries during the first half of the season.
They have got the bonus of Barcelona not being able to spend in January. They could offload Martin Montoya. Douglas hasn't really settled thus far, but he is the number 2 behind Dani Alves for that right-back slot. So there could be some players going out, but obviously Real Madrid have got that bonus.
And what about Serie A, Pete? Do you expect Roberto Mancini's return to Inter to prove pivotal in terms of their transfer activity?
Well, you know, it's a classic hallmark of Inter under Massimo Moratti, and it's going into every transfer window armed with a blank cheque and trying to spend your way out of trouble. I don't think it's going to be any different this winter. And already the players that have been linked with Mancini's new project at Inter, players that he knows quite well from Manchester City: Alexander Kolarov, James Milner, Matija Nastasic. They've all been linked. They could strengthen Inter come towards the end of the season, because with the quality at that end of the table, a club like Inter, with their resources and with the players already on their books, they really should be challenging for that third Champions League place.
Yeah, and from what I gather from Italy as well, Inter under Eric Torria probably won't spend all that much. They'll look to offload just as much as bring players in. So the likes of Pablo Osvaldo might be used as bargaining chips. Even Mauro Icardi, he's the big striker at the moment who's scoring their goals. He's got a few kind of flaws about his game. They've seen that and they want to cash in, I think, on him, maybe next summer. But if something big comes in January, then possibly he could leave as well.
So that's Spain and Italy. I want to look at Germany as well, because there are opposite problems for historically the two top clubs there. Bayern Munich looking imperious again. Dortmund, a real season of struggle. Do you expect them to be active?
Well, we do know that there are players on the fringes of the Bayern squad who maybe don't want to leave, but are looking to be forced out of the club in order to find their first team football. I mean, it's probably, you know, midfield-wise, it's the most talented group that Bayern have probably ever had. And it means that players like Xherdan Shaqiri, who's been interested in Liverpool, we know, and Juventus, might have to look elsewhere for first-team football, more regular first-team football, as will Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, who's one of the most promising talents around Europe. And Pep Guardiola would love to have him in the team a little bit more, even with the injuries to Thiago Alcantara and with Bastian Schweinsteiger, but they just can't seem to find any space for him. So he could be allowed to depart on loan, maybe a permanent transfer in the January transfer window. Yeah,
and it's completely the opposite almost at Dortmund. They just can't seem to fight at the top end anymore. They're probably going to lose Royce next summer. They're probably going to lose Hummels, especially after this season of struggle. There's question marks over Jurgen Klopp. They're not really a club that spend big normally, that really kind of look for that big purchase.
Well, you say that, but I mean, to remedy this problem, are they going to have to go back to what they were doing 8-10 years ago and spending big? Is that the only way out of this? Well,
possibly, but then Klopp hasn't really spent big in his time, and they have challenged and they've been right up there with Bayern for a long term. It's been a struggle this season. It's hard to put your finger exactly on why. They are going to keep losing the bigger players, possibly. So they just have to find a way to get themselves through it in the interim, I think.
The big problem for Dortmund is that their entire modus operandi is contingent on competing in the Champions League. Now, it's going to be a huge gamble for them if they spend their Champions League, their future Champions League earnings from qualifying for next summer, if they spend that in January and then don't end up in the Champions League. And, you know, after they came close to extinction around the middle of the last decade, and I don't think they would tolerate that happening again, so they might have to just sit out the Champions League this season.
And quite possibly as well, the kind of players that Dortmund need are the kind that Bayern are letting go of, but are Bayern going to be of a mind to help Dortmund out in a way by giving these players over?
Between the clubs aren't good, are they?
Not particularly, no, obviously, after what's happened, but then you know, Dortmund have almost freely had to sell players to Bayern. Will Bayern do it in reverse? Probably not, because that's what has got Bayern to the top of the tree.
France is always interesting, Pete. To what degree will Paris Saint-Germain be hampered by financial fair play?
Well, they have been hampered, and had they managed to get rid of some players in the summer, then they would have been even more active in last summer's transfer window. As things stand, we do know Yohan Cabaye hasn't settled very well in Paris, and Adrien Rabiot will be coming back into the squad. So he could look to depart back to the Premier League, where he was much happier. Ezekiel Lavezzi, I think his agent said in December that his heart was calling him back to Napoli. So these guys who were available, we'll say, if they end up going, then Paris Saint-Germain could end up making one or two modest signings in the window.
Yeah, and I think they have got players coming through as well. As you say, there's Rabiot, there's Bahabek, who's pushing for places in the PSG side. So they could almost offload a couple of players and not bring in reinforcements because they've already got the players there. But that's not the PSG way, really.
OK, thanks, guys. Interesting, as always. And don't forget, you can stay across all the European transfer news on Goal.